One day you wake up and realize the world has lost its color. Nothing dramatic has happened. The sun still rises, your coffee still smells the same, the clock still ticks, but something inside you has quietly come loose. Life keeps moving, but it moves without you. Everything still exists, just at a distance, as if you're watching your own life from behind a glass wall. You do what you're supposed to do. You answer messages, you laugh at the right moments, you show up, you perform. You imitate a person who's fine, but it all feels dubbed, as if the voice doesn't match the face. And the cruel part is that no one notices. You can be dying inside and still hear the world say, "You look great." Society applauds anyone who can hide their own collapse. That's what most people don't understand. Burnout doesn't arrive screaming. It seeps in like mold, slow and quiet, covering the walls of your mind until even breathing feels like too much. It's here, precisely here, that the dangerous thought begins. Not as an explosion, but as a whispered question. What if I just didn't need to continue? This question isn't madness or weakness. It's the exact moment when a breaking mind tries to negotiate with its own pain. What you feel isn't a flaw in your character. It's biology, it's history. It's the last stage of everything a human body can hold before it starts to give way. And this reflection isn't about cheap hope. It's about the truth no one says out loud. Sometimes continuing to live feels like an insult to logic. And yet, somehow, it's also the most radical act a person can commit. The human mind is the only place where pain doesn't bleed. It hides there, silent, invisible, but deadly. That's what makes it dangerous. You can die of something no one can see. If your body were wounded, the world would notice. Blood gives evidence. Fever declares danger. But when what's rotting is the mind, the suffering wears the mask of normality. You keep responding to texts, paying bills, smiling at people. And the more you function, the more everyone believes you're okay. Civilization rewards those who suffer quietly. The psychiatrist Edwin Schneidman wrote, "Suicide is not the desire to die, but the desire to end unbearable pain." That is the most precise sentence ever written on the subject. The problem is rarely wanting to die. The real problem is not knowing how to live inside a body that hurts every second. Psychic pain is not just emotion, it's the collapse of inner coherence. It's when the mind loses the ability to create meaning. When the future stops being possibility and becomes punishment. No one chooses this collapse, just like no one chooses a fartarrhythmia. The mistake is thinking the mind obeys willpower. Deep suffering is a distortion of perspective. Everything gets too close. The guilt, the fear, the memories, until there's no air left between your thoughts. David Foster Wallace called this the mind on fire. You don't want to jump, but the fire behind you pushes. And people watching from the outside call it weakness, as if someone trapped inside a burning building should worry about how the flames look. The truth is simple. Extreme suffering is not moral, it's physical. It's not cowardice, it's the thermodynamics of the soul. But modern culture tries to cure this fire with posters and synthetic optimism, as if wanting to get better were enough. But wanting is a powerless verb in front of a collapsing mind. You don't get up because there's nothing left inside you to stand on. You can't feel because the pain has consumed everything that could feel. What remains is silence, not chosen, but forced by exhaustion. And that's what the world doesn't understand. The silence of the desperate isn't surrender, it's defense. When the noise inside your mind becomes unbearable, silence is the only shelter left. No animal besides humans chooses death. Maybe that's what makes us human, the ability to deny our own instinct to survive. Voluntary death is the most human act that exists, and for that reason, the most misunderstood. Philosophy has always known this, but pretended not to. We talk about freedom, reason, purpose, as if humans were creatures of pure decision. But the moment before the fall destroys all those theories. In that moment, thought doesn't think, it breaks. There is no subject, no calculation, only a pain that no longer has a name. Suicide is not the triumph of the will, it is its demolition. The point where consciousness stops being consciousness. Where reasoning, instead of illuminating, sets fire to the last bit of clarity. Nietzsche warned that thinking too deeply is dangerous to life. There's a depth where thought stops being a tool and becomes poison. At that depth, time collapses. The past becomes a weight. the future disappears, and the present becomes a torture chamber. That is where many act, not out of choice, but out of collapse. The body simply carries out what the mind can no longer sustain. Psychology calls it narrowed consciousness, a brutal shrinkage of the mental world. Philosophy calls it the abolition of distance. And without distance, there is no freedom. Moral illusion tries to convince us there is choice until the final second. But the moment before the jump proves otherwise. There is no choice where there is no self. And the greatest irony is this: the act that looks like the most deliberate choice a human can make is almost always the most automatic. What we call decision is often the final reflex of a mind with no ground left beneath it. Schopenhauer, the philosopher who understood suffering more deeply than almost anyone, said that the will to live is the core of existence, and that even suicide is an expression of that will. He was right. To die is also to affirm life, because it is an attempt to escape from a version of life that has become unbearable. Those who end their lives are not rejecting existence. They are desperately trying to find a place without pain, a moment of rest. And that tragic belief, a belief in relief, in silence, in peace, is something profoundly human. It isn't weakness, it's a kind of inverted faith, the final attempt to make pain understandable. Humans are the only animals that don't know what to do with time. We want to stretch it when we're happy, we want to kill it when we suffer. We exist between two opposite desires, to endure and to disappear. That is the scandal of consciousness. We want meaning, but no meaning is ever guaranteed. Clarity hurts because it shines a light on the emptiness inside us, and emptiness cannot be fixed, only inhabited. Sartre said that life begins on the other side of despair. It sounds poetic, but it's not poetry, it's diagnosis. Only after everything collapses do we finally reach a state where something new can begin, because there's nothing left to lose. Ruin becomes the minimum condition for freedom. But the modern world refuses ruin. It treats suffering like a technical malfunction, as if sadness were a system error. You lose your job, reinvent yourself. You fall ill, think positive. Society is obsessed with painting over the cracks. The result is a generation that feels guilty for not being okay, a new kind of despair, the despair of not being allowed to suffer. And this is where philosophy becomes a survival tool. Nietzsche called it amor fati, the love of fate. Not in the sense of accepting everything with obedience, but recognizing that pain is also part of being alive. He wrote, "I want to learn to see the necessity in things as beautiful and the beautiful as necessary. This is the hardest practice of all, turning tragedy into clarity." Ordinary life is full of opportunities for this. Waiting at a doctor's office, the silence after an argument, the endless Sunday that won't end. These slow moments are invitations to consciousness. Philosophy doesn't begin in Athens, it begins in waiting rooms, in traffic, in boredom, in the space between what you hoped life would be and what it actually is. Psychology calls it frustration tolerance. Philosophy calls it adulthood. Wisdom isn't the end of pain. It's the ability to continue without a reason. Meaning isn't found, it's made, and it is built one day at a time. That's why one more day isn't an optimistic slogan, it's a philosophical strategy. Choosing to continue without guarantees, choosing to live without understanding why. There's no revelation waiting ahead, only the ongoing act of remaining. Camus said that true heroism is to keep existing even when logic no longer justifies life. The modern hero doesn't carry a sword, he gets out of bed. And that is enough. What holds a human being together isn't love, it's belonging. The sense that somewhere in this world there is a place where your presence doesn't feel like a burden. Heidegger said that humans are thrown beings. We are born without a map, without instructions, pushed into a world that didn't ask for us. And we spend our lives trying to earn the right to exist. Civilization feeds on this desperation, to justify ourselves, to prove we deserve to be here. Those who give up often don't do it because they lacked love. They collapse because they were exhausted from trying to earn it. And here comes the difficult truth. People don't end their lives from too much pain, but from a lack of shared meaning. When life loses its mirror, the self disappears. Aristotle said that a man without community is either a beast or a god. None of us are gods, which means isolation is a slow death, an invisible amputation. Modernity, with its toxic glorification of independence, turned isolation into a virtue. We call it strength when someone carries everything alone. But strength without witnesses is just suffering in disguise. Psychology confirms what philosophy suspected for thousands of years. Suicide rises in direct proportion to social isolation. What reduces pain is not the solution to the problem, but the presence of someone who listens. A human voice is the antidote to the abyss. But there are other supports too, quieter ones. Competence, for example. The act of recognizing that you can still act on the world. Despair grows when a person no longer sees themselves as an agent. And the smallest gesture, fixing a drawer, cooking something, planting a seed, writing a paragraph, returns the feeling of existence. Nietzsche called this the will to power, the life force that insists in expressing itself even in ruins. He wrote, "Life is not an argument, but it is what best refutes nothingness." The third pillar is autonomy. Not independence, direction. Living without direction is the quietest hell on earth. Recovering even a tiny sense of choice restores dignity. Even a prisoner can choose what to think inside his cell, and that tiny act of choice, however small, is a form of eternity. These three elements, connection, competence, and autonomy, are the beams that hold up the house of the mind. Remove one, and the roof begins to collapse. Restore even one, and the ground returns beneath your feet. Staying alive is less heroic than it is artisanal. It's not about faith or courage, it's about reconstruction. One gesture, one contact, one small decision. Philosophy only matters if it can fit inside a human body. And when life becomes unbearable, thought must become practical. A standing human being is, above all, a human in relation. Whoever has someone to talk to has somewhere to exist. Every person is a survivor disguised as fine. On the outside, we follow routines and chores and daily gestures. On the inside, the structure is always being repaired, beams patched with invisible decisions. Life is, above all, an improvisation that somehow worked. The ancient philosophers already knew. There is no such thing as stability. Heraclitus said no one steps into the same river twice, but what he didn't say is that sometimes the river drags you. And in that drag, the human being discovers their only real virtue, the ability to remain even when meaning evaporates. The truth is simple and cruel. There is no redemption, only continuity. No finish line, only the blind movement of someone who insists on existing. And that insistence, small as it looks, is the foundation of all human greatness. The Greeks called it ethos, the character forged by repeated effort. The one who continues is not the one who believes, but the one who resists. Every attempt to end pain is, in some way, an attempt to end time. But time, that silent opponent, always wins. It erodes, it fades, it reshapes. And ironically, it is that slow destruction that heals. What feels unbearable today becomes memory tomorrow, and the day after that becomes just a shape in the distance. The human mind does not get over things, it reorganizes them. Depression, guilt, despair, these are not malfunctions. They are the languages of the soul, signaling that something inside us needs to be rebuilt. Collapse is a form of communication. Existential philosophy offers not an escape from pain, but a path within it. Heidegger said that a human becomes authentic only when they face death as a constant possibility. Not pessimism, clarity. Living well doesn't mean staying far from the abyss, it means learning to walk along its edge without falling. Whoever understands this understands the true size of courage. The meaning of life is not a destination, it's a relationship. It is built in conversation, in work, in attention. It's the dog that recognizes you, the friend who responds. The text saves you for one more night. Meaning is tiny, almost invisible, but enough. It does not need to last forever, just until tomorrow. And when tomorrow comes, you rebuild it again. That's the trick. Not permanence, return. The true hero is not the one who defeats pain, but the one who reappears after it. Everything said so far points to one law. Existence is made of fractures, and fractures are the price of consciousness. To be human is to withstand the crack without letting it shatter you completely. Fragility is not the opposite of strength, it's what makes strength possible in the first place. Pain is not a system error, it's the engine of becoming. It cuts, but it also pushes. Pain is the hammer that shapes the self. Without it, there is no depth, no otherness, no form. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery with gold, making the cracks the most beautiful part. The vessel doesn't hide the damage, it highlights it. Philosophy is the kintsugi of the soul. It reflects and reshapes what has been broken. And maybe that is the point you need to hear clearly. You are not broken. You are under construction. And every living construction is imperfect. The crack is the signature of existence. Chiron, the philosopher who turned despair into clarity, wrote that life is bearable only to the extent that we do not demand meaning from it. And it is exactly in that empty space, that gap without explanation, that something sacred happens. The simple fact that you are here, breathing against all odds. Light doesn't enter despite the crack, it enters through it. And the fact that you've made it this far already says something extraordinary about you. If this video touched you, if you felt something here that the world rarely dares to say out loud, then let that feeling stay for a moment. Not just as emotion, but as recognition. These words exist for people who carry a kind of quiet strength that others often overlook, the strength of continuing, even when nothing makes sense. And the truth is, you're not listening to this by accident. Something in you is looking for a language that the world doesn't speak, a place where your thoughts aren't treated as exaggeration but as experience. And if this space gives you that, if it feels like a corner of the world where you don't have to pretend, then the most powerful thing you can do is simply stay. Comment with honesty. Share this with someone who might need it. Keep returning whenever the noise grows too loud. That is how this community survives. Not through subscriptions or perks, but through presence. Through people like you who understand that life is not made lighter by silence, but by shared truth. And if you want to go deeper into these reflections, every video here is a door. Every comment section is a conversation. Every moment you spend here helps shape a space where vulnerability isn't treated as weakness, but as clarity. Know this. Just by watching until the end, by letting these words breathe inside you, you have already done something meaningful. This channel exists for those who don't run from their own depth, even when that depth feels heavy. If you are here, it means you carry that same quiet courage. And for that, genuinely, profoundly, thank you.